When it comes to marketing, one of the most helpful things that I think I did in my practice was before I came up with this concept of winning with CPAs is I really sat down and thought about how I had tried marketing my business in the past. And I mean, when it comes to marketing, I pretty much tried it all. I've done radio shows, direct mail, seminars, email blasts. I mean, you name it. There's tons of ways to spend thousands of dollars trying to market yourself as an advisor. And of course, when we get really desperate, the preset leads and things like that, which never pan out. But as advisors, I think we get, in tight spots, and we want to buy into the magic bullet theory that there's something out there that's going to work. And I think what I realized as an advisor in my own practice is that everything I was doing, all of those different methods of marketing, were really what I now call mass marketing, which means to me that it's like going fishing and we're casting out a wide net, we're blasting out a message to the masses. It's not targeted other than maybe by age. And the reality is I did some research as I was thinking about the marketing that I had tried, and when I found that direct mail seminars were no longer effective, I began looking at the landscape of opportunities for marketing. And what I realized, and probably the most helpful thing I did, was step back for a minute and really think strategically about the types of marketing that I was doing as an advisor. And what I found that was very interesting is I found some statistics that showed that really at any given point in time, there's only about 3% of the market that's actively looking for what it is that you have to offer. So as an example, I realized that only 3% of people are actively in the market for a new home, or 3% of the people are actively shopping for a mortgage, or in my case, 3% of people are actively looking for a new advisor or help with their retirement plans. And I realized that really it was a very small percentage of the population that I was getting to my direct mail seminar events, because I realized that if there's only 3% of the people out there that are so concerned about their retirement plans that they're going to respond to a direct mail invitation, that told me that I was only attracting the folks that really were in need of something right now. And I think the reality is most marketing works that way. But a big shift in my thinking was I finally realized that meant that I was leaving 97% of the people on the table that I wasn't following up with, I wasn't building relationships with, and really that 97% or more, because even of 3% I wasn't getting even close to that to my seminars, that was 97% of my marketing dollars were wasted. So what I began thinking is, how can I more specifically, let everyone else fight over the 3% of the market that needs something today, and instead build relationships with the other 97% that are out there? Because in my opinion, that's the huge opportunity, is the 97% of people that maybe don't need something today, but if you build relationships with them today, what I've found is that when they do have a need, you'll be the one that gets the business because they've already got the relationship with you. But I think too many of us as advisors, what we do is we're chasing the people that need answers today, because obviously, yes, we need to write business today and I need to write business today, but I think more importantly, we have to set ourselves up for down the road so we don't have to continually reinvent the wheel. And it's interesting, I like to use the analogy of fly fishing. I like to fly fish a lot. And what I realized is one year when I first began fly fishing, I went out and I hired a guide to take me out on a river out in Colorado. And one of the things that he taught me is he said, when you're fly fishing, it's all about positioning. It's all about how you position the fly and so that it comes down the stream with the rest of the food supply to where the fish are already gathered, where they're already looking for the food. And what I realized is in fishing trips past, when I wasn't as successful, what I tried to do was I had tried to attract the fish to come to me and pull them away from where they already were. But what he taught me was to position the fly in the stream so that it comes down to where the fish are already gathered, waiting for the food. And I thought about that, and I thought it's so interesting how that really is a great word picture for marketing and financial services. I think if advisors can understand the same concept, that clients are already gathered, they're already asking for help, but the reality is we're using our mass marketing efforts and campaigns to try and attract those clients to our practice. But the reality is they're already gathered at the CPA's office. They're sitting there every year going to the CPA, asking for help, asking tough questions of the CPA about what to do with their portfolio, or how to reduce taxes on their IRA, or how to set up a proper distribution plan. So what I realize is that if I just position myself in the CPA's practice where the clients were already asking for help, that made all the difference in my business, because now it was easy, because now the clients were already there, already asking questions, and all they had to do was be walked down the hall and introduced to me. So that was just huge for me. And going back to talking about the mass advertising that I know we all do as advisors, one thing that I also realized when I looked back at the different types of marketing that I had done, before I found a CPA model that worked, and before I was able to really spend the time out of my practice to create what is now Winning with CPAs, I really had to sit and look at why was I so sold out on direct mail seminars, and why had it taken me so long to admit that they were no longer working. And I think what's really interesting is, as an advisor myself, I go to all the same trade shows, I go to the same trainings, and I go hear all the different advisors that do $20 or $30 million a year. And it's interesting that they seem like all of them come back to doing more seminars. And I thought to myself, well, I know I'm not the only advisor out there that knows that seminars are no longer effective, but why is it that nobody wants to admit that? And I think what's interesting is that I know for myself, I got to the point where I didn't want to admit that my direct mail response was at an all-time low. I didn't want to admit that seminar attendance numbers were drying up. And I also had to finally realize that those that were interested, those that were coming to the seminars, had their guard up so high that it made it very difficult for them to actually listen to my message, because they're constantly wondering, when is he going to try and sell me something? And also I realized that seminars were no longer setting me apart from the crowd, because when I first started doing seminars, I was maybe one of 3 advisors in my marketplace. Today, if I were doing seminars, I would be one of probably 15 or 16 advisors, and we're in a pretty small community. But it was interesting because I realized it seemed like nobody wanted to admit that direct mail seminars were no longer working. And I finally came to the realization that I think the reason was twofold. Number one, I think most marketing organizations, I think most advisors don't really know what the best answer is to solve the direct mail seminar problem. And the other reason I think no one as advisors want to admit it is the same reason I didn't, and that is because if I admitted to myself that seminars were no longer working, that meant I then was faced with a real problem, and that is, then what am I going to go back to? And I knew I did not want to go back to asking for referrals or cold calling or preset leads or any of the other types of advertising that I had tried that weren't as successful as seminars. But what I was forced to do when I finally admitted that to myself was to be able to really sit back and look at the landscape and say, what really makes the most sense for marketing my practice now going forward in the climate that we're in today, given that direct mail seminars isn't going to be as effective as it once was. But it wasn't until I admitted that I was able to then go forward. So I think advisors are probably sitting there, probably a little hesitant, saying, if I admit that direct mail seminars are no longer the answer, it's the only leg on my marketing stool, so what am I going to do? And I think that's where Winning with CPAs can come in and really have what we've seen is catapult advisors' business to the next level, because fundamentally and strategically, it just makes more sense.